We are incredibly honored tonight to have Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple Computer, with us tonight. At this time, I will turn the podium over to Dean Mark Rubin, our Dean of the Farmer School of Business, to introduce our honored speaker. Thank you.
How many of you would feel lost without your iPhone, iPad, iWatch, or Mac? Without the genius of tonight's speaker, those vital technological devices would probably not exist, since it's all about the chip. Steve Wozniak, also known as the Woz, was a pioneer in the computing industry with his design of Apple's first line of products. In 1976, he and Steve Jobs founded Apple Computer Inc., with Wozniak's Apple I personal computer and then the game-changing Apple II. Woz also was one of the first developers of video games and the space-saving universal remote control. In 1981, Woz returned to UC Berkeley, finished his degree in electrical engineering, computer science, and then channeled his lifelong passion for mathematics and electronics into encouraging the next generation of technical wizards, working with grade school students and their teachers in the Los Gatos School District. He is the founder of the Electronic Frontier Foundation and was the founding sponsor of the Tech Museum, Silicon Valley Ballet, and Children's Discovery Museum of San Jose. This month, he launched WozU, an online tech education program. He has been widely recognized for his innovative creations. In 1985, Woz was awarded the National Medal of Technology by the President of the United States. In 2000, he was inducted into the Inventors Hall of Fame and was awarded the prestigious Heinz Award for Technology, the Economy, and Employment. And in 2014, he was awarded the Hoover Medal, a prestigious honor given for outstanding extra-career services by engineers to humanity. It was inducted into the Industry Week Manufacturing Hall of Fame. Please join me in welcoming inventor, educator, Steve Wozniak.
Thank you all for giving up your time tonight and being here. I go back, when I was a child, your early inspirations, who you're going to be in life, sometimes start when you're young and often in your family. And my father was an electrical engineer. He never pushed, this is what you should be, this is what you should be. Never pushed his values on us. I'm the only one in the family. I liked what he did. I liked watching him work out formulas on papers in the house, going down to where he worked and seeing signals on a TV set screen. And I wanted to be an electrical engineer. I started studying some of the math behind it. I read a book. You know what? When you get an interest in something and you get motivated, it's often more important than knowledge. The book was about a hero who was a ham radio operator, and with his friends, they could tap out messages to another city, Morse code messages to another state. And at the end of the book, it said, you can order this equipment and become a ham radio operator. Okay, I was like 9 years old, and you can't learn to drive a car at 9 years old, but you can become a ham radio operator. You have to learn a lot of mathematics of electronics parts. So I got into it, and I decided I wanted to be an engineer. And I asked my father, what do engineers do? Oh, engineers design things like buildings and bridges and washing machines. And our great-grandparents had to wash clothes by hand, and rinse it out. And I thought, oh my gosh, engineers, I want to be an engineer and make life easier for people, make all these nice appliances for the home. And my father said, and someday, if life gets easier, we won't have to work as hard. Maybe we'll only have to work 4 days a week. Well, today in Silicon Valley, it takes 2 people working full-time jobs just to own a home. And back then, it was just one person even had to work. So we didn't get our 4-day work week yet, and it got kind of intense. But I decided to be an engineer. I got my ham radio license, learned a lot of mathematics, and then I stumbled upon a journal in the hall closet. Computers were big, immense things that you saw on television. They were in big companies, maybe. They were in the military. They were in little places called research, whatever that was. And I was a young kid, 9 years old, 10 years old. I discovered this journal it started explaining how computers operated on zeros and ones, and it taught you how to add numbers made up of zeros and ones. And I said, wait a minute, that's no harder for a 9-year-old than anything we've ever learned in school. There's no complicated mathematics. And I learned about little logic gates that made tiny decisions, like a light switch. Up is on, down is off. Those kind of simple decisions, and you could combine a lot of them together and get something that would actually add these ones and zeros. I read these articles were so incredible to me in this journal made for engineers. There were no books in a bookstore. I would go down to Kepler's scientific bookstore near Stanford in Palo Alto, and they had no books touching on computer subjects. And but I fell in love with this, and I knew it would be the passion for my life. There were TV screens where every little dot that was white or black was a 1 or a 0, and a scanning ray could write them and read them and rewrite them and keep the pattern. Whoa, this was incredible stuff to learn. I felt special. You don't learn this in school. Nobody else in my school has this. Nobody else in my school had a ham radio license. Heck, the first time I got my picture on the front page of the local newspaper, I went to an event with my mom, and it was and I pulled out a piece of paper and it said, ham radio operators of Sarah School unanimously support Richard Nixon for governor. Flash, 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 all the press pictures, and the front of the newspaper, San Jose Mercury, said, Steve Wozniak representing a school group. They didn't get the joke. All my life, I love it when I tell jokes, but somebody interprets it like it's real. So here I am. I know I love computers, and I'm trying to learn what a real computer is. I did science fair projects with hundreds of parts and hundreds of wires hooked together that would play tic-tac-toe and never lose in 6th grade. And by 8th grade, you could flip all these switches like you see on the old computer displays, and you could add numbers in computer style and subtract them. And I knew all this stuff, but I didn't know really a computer. There were no books on it. In high school, I was so advanced in electronics. I mean, I could build little circuits that make tones, and I could do everything, and I kind of knew it all already. And our teacher saw that I would just play pranks on other students, but he had relations with industry. Education was not confined to the high school borders. He got industry to donate parts to the class. He did clever ways to build up test equipment at low cost over the years, so we had better equipment than any local college. But he took people like me every year, and he wound up getting us in with engineers in other companies. I got to go down to Sylvania in Sunnyvale once a week and program this thing called a computer. I learned some programming language. My first program that was real was the Knight's Tour of Chess. I played chess, and it's bounce a knight piece around the chessboard, doing the proper moves, and hit every square exactly once and no square twice. No answers came out from the computer. No answers came out. I studied my program. It was working exactly right. It took me a couple of weeks, and then I figured out that my computer was going to get every possible solution in 10 to the 27th years. Much longer than our universe has been here. What that told me, that was a shock. I thought I could do anything. I had infinite power with a computer that could do 1 million things a second. How fast can a human being even count numbers? 1 million things a second. And now I realize even if it did 1 billion, 1 trillion, whatever, it couldn't solve this problem. That problem is solvable by a human brain with intuition, with ideas and approaches to solving it. It's not solvable by the raw speed of a computer. All my life I was going to continue to kind of compare the brain to computers. Next, I was down at that company programming the computer, and I saw a booklet on a desk. It was called the Small Computer Handbook, about a smaller size computer, something, the size of a toaster oven, that had been made by Digital Equipment Corporation, the PDP-8 computer. Oh my gosh, I said, that manual, that's about a computer? They said, you could have it if you want. They let me take the manual with me. I went home and studied it. It described the insides of a computer, storage places, combinations of ones and zeros that would tell it to add numbers or store them somewhere in memory. And then I said, whoa, I don't know, this wasn't an assignment for school. I just said, I wonder if I could design a computer. on paper. And I was in high school. I spent many long weekends struggling to build up those little tiny building block pieces called logic gates on chips. If I could design it on paper and make a computer, and I finally got close, and I was kind of proud of myself, you know. No reason to do it. No grades, no recognition, nobody else did it. I was just shy, I was a social outsider, a geek in school. So I had lots of time to do this, and I loved it. And finally, new chip manual came out. And I looked at the new chips. Can I design that computer with these chips? And I got better and better. Every weekend, I would sit down in my room at home, and I would close my door, all alone. I would sit on paper and try to figure out how to design computers. Totally self-taught. It's the best way to learn something. You struggle, and it takes longer to learn, but you learn it so deeply. And then I started redesigning this every single computer in the world that I could get a manual for. And how would I get computer manuals? They weren't in stores, I said. The top physics research place in the world right now is probably considered CERN, you know, in Switzerland and France. But back then it was Stanford Linear Accelerator Center in Palo Alto. And I found out I could drive over on a Sunday and just drive in, and I could find the main building, and the smartest people in the world don't lock doors. A universal truth. I could go in and I could find computer magazines and fill out cards and have them send me manuals. I would get manuals for IBM computers, digital equipment computers, Varian computers, Hewlett-Packard computers, and every weekend I'd sit down in my room and design that computer. And then I started designing them over and over, trying to make my designs better. Fewer parts to me was better. Fewer chips, and then later, no, if you use a bigger chip that's more complex, that might count as 2 chips. And so I finally came up with different formulas. The smaller size you can make it, the better your design. And I started coming up with tricks in my head and ways to generate new tricks. I was also the math star in my schools, winning the math award, so I was good at thinking. And I came up with tricks that I knew that wouldn't be in any book ever, and ways to generate new tricks that were in no books. So I knew that there might be other people as good as me in the world, engineers at designing computers, but none better. And I didn't think I would ever design computers in my life. Why? I was going to be an engineer. Engineers did strong mathematics, calculations to make TVs work, differential calculus, designs, and I didn't think engineers made computers. They made televisions and radios and radars and things like that. I just thought computers were made in these strange places called research, but I loved doing it. First year of college, introduction to computers, graduate course, I got an A+. By writing every single program I could think of writing, I ran our class 5 times over budget, more than out-of-state tuition, a lot of money, like $50,000 today. Whoa, that was a little scary. I had a great fun time and learned a lot at that school, but didn't try to go back there. I was afraid they would charge me. And my parents couldn't afford it. 2 years of college, and then what do? I didn't want to burden my parents with the cost of a 4-year college, Berkeley. So I went to work for 1 year, programming for a year, for a nearby company building a computer. I walked in the door by accident, discovered what they were doing, applied for a job, and got it. And while I was at that company, earning money for my 3rd year of college, an engineer heard that I could design computers. And I said, yeah, I love designing them. And he said, well, did you ever build one? And I said, no, I could never afford a single chip. No money. And he said, I can get you chips. I have connections with chip companies. I went home, designed a computer, built this computer up, and it was called the cream soda computer. Bill Fernandez and I built it, and we would drink cream soda while we were building it. Bill said, you should meet this other guy from our high school, Steve Jobs, because he plays pranks at the school too. I was well known as a prank player. Steve Jobs had played some pranks, and he was into electronics, although he wasn't really a designer like I was. But we met and we got along. We're talking about life philosophies, things going on back in Vietnam War days and the like, counterculture in San Francisco. Steve looking for a lot of religion. Me sort of having found who I was, have my feet well on the floor because I was older. Took Steve to my house that first night, showed him the Bob Dylan albums, the liner notes, the words to songs. And we formed a strong friendship, and we would go to those songs together and talk about life. This was Steve Jobs 0, leading up to Apple 5 years later. Over those 5 years, about once a year, Steve would come into town, see something I had designed for fun, and he would always be able to get money for it. He was a salesman. He had worked in surplus electronics sales even. And he would turn my designs into hundreds of dollars for us, or thousands even, and this was just a great relationship we had. Okay, eventually came time, the Homebrew Computer Club, a club of people, not necessarily executives, not necessarily money people, some Stanford professors and the like. All the big computer companies said little small computers based on a new chip called the microprocessor weren't worth anything. We said once people have computers, we're going to communicate, we're going to educate, we're going to be important as geeks that understand computers. We're going to be important. And oh my gosh, I wanted to be a part of this. Back in high school, I told my father, someday I am going to own a 4K computer. And he said, it costs as much as a house. And I was stunned, so I said, I'll live in an apartment. Threw down the gauntlet. I was going to have a computer, and I was so close. I was working on the hottest products of the time for Hewlett-Packard, handheld scientific calculators. I didn't have a college degree, but they had interviewed me and hired me on the spot. And I was familiar with all the parts and the prices and how they could be hooked together, and finally saw the formula. It sort of happened right around then, the right kind of parts that made a 4K computer affordable. Why 4K? Without a 4K computer in those days, you could not write a computer program. You couldn't write a computer program that was really useful and easy and solve puzzles and problems and things like that. So that set me on the way. I wanted to give other people a device so that they could sit down and write programs to solve problems of the world, solve problems they had on their own, to solve puzzles and play games. Games was so ultimately important. We had to have games in our life. I believed in fun. I'd come up with my formula for happiness. H equals S minus F. Happiness equals smiles minus frowns. In a later year, I modified it to H equals F cubed. H equals food, fun, and friends, where food is necessities of life, like clothing. And H equals 3 Fs, and I said that to when I was being put in my high school Hall of Fame, and the students started laughing. Oh, and I had to go on the microphone, and embarrassingly, I had to say, well, there might be a 4th F. So anyway, I wanted to build a product that would make men, people who knew how to use a computer, who wanted to learn programming, more power, superpower, more power than people were supposed to have. And I gave away my design for free to the people at the club. Public domain. Steve Jobs didn't know it existed, but he came into town and he saw it, and he said, "One, and let's start a company to build a little piece that will help them build your computer." He wasn't yet a computer company guy. He was a salesman of parts. He'd done that a lot in his life. The very first Apple I computer, I had to buy it myself for $300 and give it to a woman who would take it into schools. I believed that much in education. In 6th grade, I told my dad, I'm going to be an engineer first, but a 5th grade teacher second. Anyway, we got started with such a great product, it was going to be all of Apple's revenues for the first 10 years of Apple. This Apple II computer that I owned totally, I conceived it, I built it, I prototyped it. Steve Jobs would turn it into a product, a physical shape, in marketing and words and press, and I would just hide in the laboratory and keep inventing things. This computer was the first time ever that arcade games were color. It was the first time ever that arcade games were software. A 9-year-old kid could write a good game with moving colors on a screen in one day, where normally with hardware designs of the past, at Atari, it would take a skilled engineer a year to design a game. That was the start of Apple, and that was the first 10-year run of Apple. We're going to get into a lot more topics. I don't want to take all the time personally right now to talk about, iPhones and what they do for us and how life has changed and what we've given up along the way. I'm going to wait for that as we get into some questions. I'm going to do some sit-down fireside chat now, but thanks for listening to my intro. What you should do with your life, but he said, one thing, you should always be honest. And I took that very seriously. I thought out my life, in that when your personality settles down between 18 and 23 years old, and I could solve any math and, all the kind of STEM subject. I could take the tests and do so good and win the awards. But, somebody else might write a paper and go up and maybe sweet talk to a professor and get a better grade. And I didn't think that was honesty like real mathematics solutions. So I kind of made it important in my life for a reason that really isn't necessarily true. Now, when we started Apple, We did come to some ethical questions. The first thing is, I had presented to a group at Hughes Engineering down in the Southern California area, in Orange County. And I presented and told them, oh, we're going to come out with this great Apple II. I showed them demos, and we're going to sell the PC boards alone. That's not a computer in a case, it's just a board for $500. Well, because I had said it, I wanted to keep my word good. So we started the company, we had big money, we had an investor, an adult who ran, he was our third equal partner, and he really ran things. And I told him, oh, I wanted to sell just the board alone, but no, that wasn't the future. The future was computers, you pull it out of the box and start using it. And it wasn't getting away from the geek side, but he let me do it. He was a softie. He let us sell some, we just didn't promote it, advertise it, only this one batch of computers, because I had made the word. Another thing was, how would you get this computer signal on your home TV? Back then, there was no way you could force somebody to buy anything color, but everyone owned a color TV. And there were no video in slots back then. You had to build a little transmitter that transmitted on channel 3 or channel 33 and put your signal into the TV. It's called a modulator. The FCC didn't have any rules. How much power was legal? What was all this? And I was scared of going over a line that didn't exist. Does that make it legal or not? So I wouldn't let Apple sell that. And our marketing department, behind my back, and another engineer, kind of designed it, but they had another guy sell it on the outside, so it wasn't sold by Apple. It was that kind of ethics that really wouldn't let me run the company. When we started Apple, we had the chance of the big money coming in, and I turned it down. I turned it down because I said, look, I work at Hewlett-Packard, no college degree, designing the hottest products of the day, like today's hottest smartphones. And I'm going to be an engineer at Hewlett-Packard for the rest of my life. I'm not going to move up the org chart. I just don't want to get into politics and the political side of things. And I just want to be a good engineer because, you know, it's what I love doing. The PhDs over at HP Labs would call our division to get better solutions from me all the time. And then, so when the big money was offered, I said no. Because it came with a hitch. I'd have to leave Hewlett-Packard. Steve Jobs went into a frenzy and he got all my friends and relatives to call me, take the money, take the money, take the money. And one friend finally said the right thing. He said, look, you can take the money and remain an engineer just to get rich. You know, he said you didn't have to run a company. That was something I was scared of doing. So inside of Apple, my ethics was probably a little too high. My openness, my honesty is like you see here. And it's like I would have been not the right person to run a company. You have to have very scripted, planned, you know, procedures for marketing and business. But I just hung out in the laboratory all alone, working on the newest inventions to let our computer connect to printers and modems and disks and music keyboards and things like that. So I handled it without sacrificing my own personal ethics. I just kept them away. To this day, I'm the only person. My dad had said, you know, how far you go in life is how much people like you. Never offend anyone. Smile at everyone. If they think very differently, if somebody says something bad to you, you say something good back. It's called taking the high road. A lot of people need to learn that lesson. But I was always nice to everybody and never had any arguments, never had any fights, never had any friends or problems. So to this day, I'm the only person who's gotten a payroll check every single week from Apple since the start. Little known thing, small check I still get even, loyalty and all that. So I'm a little different than a lot of people in my category. But one of the things was I knew who I was inside from when I was 20 years old and thought it out. And I wasn't going to let the huge wealth to three founders of Apple, I wasn't going to let that sway me into working the rest of my life to be more wealthy and more powerful. I want to be equal to everybody in the middle. So I did all my best to distribute it into good causes, good people, get rid of it, and not live that lifestyle. And I succeeded. I mean, I did things that I would have done without Apple. I would have finished my college degree 1 year to go, so I did go back to Berkeley under a fake name because my name was famous. So my Berkeley diploma says Rocky Raccoon Clark. And I also was going to be a teacher someday. I wound up teaching for 8 years of my life. No press allowed, so it's not that well known a story. In the public schools, just help young people learn how to use a computer to do everything better in school. So those things stuck with me. Who I was, I didn't really let all the big success modify. And as far as having way too much wealth, I mean, giving computers to schools didn't mean anything. It's given your own time, which is more valuable. But and a few divorces help with the money too.
Cyber attacks on business, government, nonprofits, as well as on individuals, and the related cybersecurity issues are constantly in the news. What can and should we be doing to deal with this constant problem that will likely get better or worse in the future?
Yeah, cyber attacks on big companies and banks and the like. It's hard for us to say individually, what can you do? Is there a way that you can know that your bank is better protected than some other bank, that nothing's going to happen? Oh my gosh, I had Bitcoin in one online bank and they got ripped off by a very easy method. Somebody bought out all their Bitcoin on credit card and then canceled the credit card payment. So, can you ever protect yourself against people selling snake oil? Come up to you, oh, run this program, it'll do something good for you. You can be tricked into such easy things that totally take over your computer, and demand ransom from you. Can we ever stop that? It's very hard because so much of it's done in the social sphere. It's not like you can put in technology that protects it, and as much technology you put in, they almost always find some hole here and there. You can certainly make your choices. Go for the most secure products from the most secure company, I should say. and you're better off. And if you also you got to think about, well, what are cybersecurity? I mean, that's like, oh, hackers might get my credit card number or something, which is worthless to them almost anyway. They might steal my ID theft. Oh, that's terrible. That's horrible things can come about for a while from that. But then again, the company might monitor every little thing you do, every tap, every menu, every choice, every browsing website, every email you send, So if you want to use anything from Google or Facebook or the Chrome browser, go right ahead. It's wide open. I'm sorry, they got it. Or you could choose to go the Apple way and protect yourself better. I mean, protecting, you're a human being. Your stuff belongs to you and shouldn't be known by all your neighbors, right?
In his book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, Klaus Schwab believes we're in another area of dramatic change in technology. How do you see the emergence of new technologies, such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, and machine learning impacting the economy in both the short and long term? Is there another personal computer type invention, hardware or software, to be developed that will have a similar type of impact as the personal computer?
Well, we've seen a lot of examples of computer learning that have swayed our thinking in this area of artificial intelligence. A computer can be taught to play every single game knowing nothing against itself and figure out what works, and within an hour become better than any human has ever been at the game. Why? A human being can sit down and play maybe 80,000 games over a lifetime if they play it constantly all day long. And a machine can do that in an hour, that many games. So machine can learn certain things, but is it really intelligence? Is it working like the human brain? I gave you one example at the podium, but how does the human brain work? Do we really know how it's structured? We hear article after article after article. We've discovered this about the brain, and we've probed neurons that excite when certain pictures are shown. We don't even know where memories are in the brain or how they're stored. We pretend. We don't know how the brain is wired. Now, making a brain is going to be a huge task. There are a lot of things that have to be solved that are total unknowns today. I was in a company, though, Fusion.io. The engineers there figured out how to make a brain. Yes, it takes 9 months. So artificial intelligence is one of the worst phrases that misleads you. The other one is for controlled experiments, a word called significance. It's totally gives you the wrong impression. Artificial intelligence makes you think that we're actually writing software that has intelligence like a brain. And the funny thing is, none of that is true. It can do a lot of little tasks that following rules, but until we know how a brain really works, maybe we'll stumble onto it. Create some artificial intelligence that actually listens to people talking and 6 months later starts speaking itself, or 3 months later, and actually does learn like a human being and kind of, maybe someday we'll find out what intelligence is in a physical way. But right now, we aren't even close. You take things, self-driving cars, they'll use artificial intelligence and they'll figure out what's going on the road. I'll tell you, whenever there's one thing unusual that isn't normal on the road, every human being, driver, smart, dumb, will figure out the way to go. Maybe cops are signaling you around to go somewhere else, and all these little machines with their radar and their cameras can't figure a thing out, and they probably never will. That's just my opinion. So we think that we have artificial intelligence, and all we have is a simulated partial intelligence under the right circumstances. Yes, it helps human beings quite a bit when we have these kind of learning machines. I developed technology to help me get more done in my life, to be more of a superhero, to be more powerful than ever before, and that's the case. Maybe someday we'll actually build enough of these things that'll take care of us, and we won't have to work 5 days a week, or we won't have to work at all. Everything will be taken care of, and we'll be just pets to the technology we created. We'll be like pets. We get everything, our clothing, our house, and our food and our entertainment, and everything we need. So when I got that idea, I started feeding my dog fillet steaks, because I'm going to treat my pets the way I would want to be treated if I'm ever a pet 200 years from now. Let's say 200 years. That's the time frame. That's the time frame I think is more realistic. A lot of people talk about these artificial intelligence, machine learning, like they're so drastic and to be feared. They're more important. They're above humans. Technology takes over from humans and all that stuff, and that is hardly worth the fear. The machines won the war hundreds of years ago against humans. They learned how to make cheap clothing in Manchester, England, and we'll fire from then on. We'll fire people, but not the machines that give us cheaper products. And that's been true to this day. Well, wait a minute, did all the jobs disappear? They talk about, oh my gosh, these machines are going to think us out of all our jobs and be doing everything. Maybe they'll get smart enough someday. Maybe they'll really be intelligent. And by keeping a CEO in a company, you'll perform worse economically than if the computers have no human beings. But we're not close to that, and we've had jobs displaced over and over by robots. Look at car manufacturing for one. I mean, Honda's more American car than here in Columbus than almost any American car company in Detroit. But jobs got replaced. Did we wind up having a real shortage of jobs forever? No, they displace, different kinds of jobs become valuable. We're in the digital era. People who are learning how to program computers and write apps and automate processes of their own companies and make it more satisfying to do your work. Those kind of people are in high demand for jobs, so the jobs might switch a bit. Those who go to engineering school and learn robotics and learn materials handling and stuff like that. Now, we mentioned the other one, blockchain. Blockchain, I'm a real fan of. Blockchain is a mathematical technology that is very difficult to understand and to learn and to find good information that teaches you how it works. Most people think blockchain is what Bitcoin is. Well, Bitcoin is sort of a currency based on blockchain. Bitcoin has a value. Mathematically, there are only a certain number of Bitcoin that can ever exist. I love something when it's mathematically pure. It's not like a government can come in politically and say, we're going to just create more Bitcoin. You can't do it. The cost of a Bitcoin is the cost that it takes to run computer energy to mine it and create more of it, but there's an absolute physical limit. I like that concept. I also like the concept that there's no one centralized ledger that keeps track of how much everyone has. The ledger is spread out to tons of places all over the web. It just got distributed without existing. Every single company today that does anything, pharmaceuticals, maybe car sales, any company can look at their whole business chain and say that in theory we could start implementing it on a blockchain, and then we don't have to keep one big computer that stores a database of everything there is. It's just kind of out there and it's accessible. There are industries that apply to that. In conflict minerals, a lot of people don't want to use minerals that come from countries where young children are forced and enslaved to dig out the minerals. How do you know what country you're getting it from? There might be gold from country A and gold from country B, all smelted together and they get mixed. By using a blockchain technology for all the ingredients coming in, you don't necessarily trace what ingredients I got from where, but you can organize it so that payments will never, ever reach the end of the chain to the, let's say, the bad suppliers of these minerals. There's so many ways that blockchain is going to have application in our life in the future, and it's going to be slowed down because it's technologically difficult, but if you have somebody going to engineering school, learn how to employ and apply blockchain technology. Because I can't take the time to try to describe it here because it would be a very incomplete description, but it's just a mathematics that's spread out over everywhere, and it's very admirable.
Thanks. Before I ask my last question, I invite anyone in the audience to the microphone in the back if you'd like to ask a question. Based on your book, you seem to enjoy a good joke. How has humor been an important element in your life, and how has it enhanced your happiness?
Well, when I came up with my formula, happiness equals smiles minus frowns, I wanted to always follow humor and do fun things and go to concerts and enjoy. But making up pranks, that's an idea that's in your neurons in your brain, and you're going to turn it into something real, and maybe trick somebody, play with somebody, and oh my gosh, they don't know these things. So when I was in electronics, a lot of people wouldn't know that electronics could be doing what they heard. I might be in my driver training simulator in high school, and I would press a little button on the device and it would make the sound of a police siren. I just wanted to see if anybody would pull over. And there's some laughter here, and these little things were always funny and joking to me and to friends in a close, you know, your personal friends, so jokes that aren't really funny to the general world are funny to them. So it became a lot of my life, you know, to really try to enjoy it and always be happy. Better than that, though, I learned how to not to have a frown. Don't be political. Don't argue with anybody. Don't care if somebody is different. You don't have to fight. Don't fight. You know what? Be constructive. If something goes wrong, don't look to, I want to blame somebody. I want to put the blame. I want to say negative things. No. What can I do today to be constructive to move forwards? I mean, that's totally an example of technology companies of today, of which I helped create one. Because you look at what politicians do. Does it ever move society forward? Does it move people forward? Has it ever in history? Go back to the Roman times or whatever. No. Half the people would say yeah, half the people would say no. Some people would say it took us back. You go forward. No. But technology, every development by technology companies changes our life for the better and moves us forward. So the real leaders to me are the leaders of the tech companies.
We have questions from the back?
Do you think, say, social media networks and, say, the technologies that use those have a moral obligation to people that use them?
Oh, I think that anybody who puts out a product or a service has a moral obligation to protect people from being injured that might be injured in some way, and also to seek that the truth gets out. I mean, look at our political system. I mean, it's just like snake oil. I can be sold, oh my gosh, this is a good thing, it's going to cure me, when it's really just a bunch of junk. So the more you can get out there through social media or any advertising methods, the more you can really mislead people from the real facts.
Thank you.
As a member of the student-run venture capital fund, we interact with a lot of student founders on Miami's campus. I was wondering what would be one piece of advice you would give young entrepreneurs?
Okay. A lot of young entrepreneurs that I run into come from the business school background, and they have entrepreneur majors and that sort of thing, and they say, here are the methods to study a market, to write business plans, to plan finances, and then go out and raise money, because to be significant, you've got to have money for an idea. And they take their idea, I'll get money, and then once I have the money, I'll hire an engineer. And engineers are so clever at solving problems their whole life. Find an engineer, not somebody with good grades. Find the one who has built things, built projects their whole life, hardware or software, and make sure they're part of your founding team, deciding what can you do, and here's something you hadn't thought of, here's something more we can do, and don't expect an engineer candidate to come up with answers in a 1-hour meeting. Let them think on it. This is very difficult stuff in the brain. So include an engineer, include a business thinker that really knows we've got to make a successful company that actually makes a product and lives and earns money, makes a profit, and include marketing thinking. Marketing thinking is more important than engineering in a lot of people's minds, mine included. What products are worth how much to what people? What features should we include? What should we not include? How do we keep it simple and elegant? Marketing thinking is so important But where does the best marketing come from? Not assuming what the other people in this building will buy. It comes from, I want it myself. This product I want so desperately, I'm going to make it so perfect for myself. It may not be that anybody else wants my product in the end, but at least it's going to be so good that if I'm right and there's other people like me, I'm going to sell a lot of it. That's it.
I was just curious on your opinion for free and open source software and whether you value its importance.
Yes, I'm very much for open source software because I was a technical genius in computers and software when I grew up, and I want to buy a product and be able to get into it and modify it and enhance it and add my own changes. Why would I be restricted? Why would you stop me from doing that? I'm not doing something criminal. When I had to start Apple, there were no inputs to a television. You had to unscrew the back of the TV, take it off. You looked at the open source documentation showing all the parts in the TV back, and then you probe with an oscilloscope and get the right patterns. I found where the video signal is, and I know how to create a video signal on a wire. Couldn't have possibly done it. It's totally open source. One of the problems with open source today is that our computers and our smartphones have millions of lines of software created by tens of thousands of people over time, and there's no way to know what's really in there. It's very difficult to make other than simple modifications. Apple, although Apple is very closed-minded in that regard with our products. Look at the iPhone. We came out with the App Store, and no Apple product made as big a difference in my life than the third-party App Store did with apps like Uber and airlines and trains and restaurants and reservations and people who would do tasks for me. So it's sort of like it exists, but it's changed its mind a bit. I'd suggest any youngster that wants to have the most fun in their life grow up with Raspberry Pi or other types of little low-cost computers and get right into the guts and live in that open source world. That's how you learn it the best.
I was just wondering if, when you were kind of coming up as a young engineer, if you ever were discouraged or had this fear. You seem pretty confident in everything you've done. Did you ever face challenges, and how did you overcome them?
I don't have any memories of ever being discouraged or facing challenges. I was rare. I knew I was rare. Coming out of high school, I could get a job anywhere for the rest of my life. I didn't have to go to college to be able to get a job. I didn't have to I got a job designing, like the hottest smartphone today was the Hewlett-Packard calculators, the handheld scientific calculators. I got to design them and I didn't have a college degree. Every single task that I took on for Apple projects and many projects to other people leading up to Apple. I did the first hotel moving system in the world. I did a whole bunch of really incredible ones, and I would charge 5 cents for each one of these projects. When I was in college, I loved typing. It was my passion, so I would type a term paper for other people from midnight till 6:30 in the morning. 5 cents was all I would charge. You have to, I was kind of trying to be true to my real reasons for doing things. Starting Apple, every project I did for Apple was an A+ result. I look back and I don't understand how that magic came out of a mind. It's like Bob Dylan's Bringing It All Back Home, Highway 61 Revisited, and Blonde on Blonde albums. Where did this genius come from? And I have no idea today. I'm certainly not in it indie anymore, but every single project worked out as A+, and I never came across one I couldn't do in those days. So it was long after Apple's success that I had some failures trying startup companies and trying to build a project, not being able to hit my goals.
Just as you, I share a strong foundation for the importance of education, and I want to know what your opinion would be if the American school system could implement more courses on coding from a younger age.
Yeah, I don't think everyone should be forced, you have to learn coding, but I think what you learn from coding is a lot more worthwhile in life than mathematics. Have I ever used algebra once in all my Apple stuff? Maybe a tiny bit of algebra, but nothing higher. I took the higher level math. I was going to be an engineer in the analog days when you built televisions and radios and you did all the calculus designs. But coding teaches you not mathematics, but it teaches you how to follow a long logical sequence. And every step has to be right to get to the end. Well, that applies to every thinking, every project, every job, whether it's coding or not. And I think it's good for a lot of people to come up with that, knowing you don't just have instant little quick answers, you don't think it out just randomly. You really can go through a procedure and get something logical that actually works in the end. So I highly recommend programming, but not just one course. Learn to code in an hour, learn to code in a day, learn to code in a week. No, courses like you could divert yourself to several courses even in high school to get through it. Don't start coding too early. Your mind is not ready for it until it's ready for algebra, knowing that variables can hold stuff. It's called symbolic reasoning. You don't reach that stage of cognitive development until most people about 12 years old. You know, maybe 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 learn it by 10 years old. But, so don't start too soon, or you'll just be able to do it and impress people, but really not understand it the same. And not be able to create it on your own. Thanks.
Hi Steve, thanks for coming. My question is, do you have any favorite books, and if so, can you share them?
Any favorite what?
Favorite books.
Books? When I was I was very affected by Walden Pond when I was young, and thought about that quite a bit, and then Hemingway's Farewell to Arms. And they got to me emotionally. And then it was Lord of the Rings. And nowadays it's just Into the Wild. I don't know, a psychological look at a person during those ages when I was developing, and it was so important. And a lot of people, like even Steve Jobs, are trying to find out who you are in life. So that's about it. I mean, in recent times, Ready Player One, you know. I loved listening to a lot of audiobooks, a lot of the Dan Brown ones, but that I don't pick any one of those as my special favorite.
I am sure in this crowd there are those that are looking to be partners in a business in the future. So given that you've already covered that it usually takes an engineer and a gearhead, what practical advice would you have for both, it usually takes somebody in business, somebody who's a gearhead to make it happen, an engineer. What practical advice would you have for those entertaining the idea of becoming in a partnership? What would you tell them as a ground rule?
Love what you're wanting to do, want to do it, and try to see that you're doing some good for a lot of people by doing it, and that has to be your motivating force. Wanting to do it is more important than knowledge, and if you're only doing it to make money, no. When you hit on a good idea and you start to go on it, and it's going to be worth money, then good, that's luck. Luck's the most powerful superpower there is. Shoot a bullet at me and it misses. So you can't guarantee that there is one formula to success. There are formulas, just keep trying and trying. And every time you fail, what happened was you learned processes to make what you made. Your brain evolved a little more and it can more quickly do the rest. In my case, those 10,000 hours was over and over and over trying things because, you know, I'd come home from work and I was too geeky to have a girlfriend or a wife, so I had lots of time to work on my projects. The hours add up, and that's really where it comes from. Time and patience and hope, and try to be the best. Try not to just do a project that you can do. How can I make it better than other humans would think of doing? Gives you that advantage. It still doesn't make it successful for sure.
Hi, thanks. This kind of goes along the lines with what you were talking about machine learning, but see, the inventor of Tesla, now I'm blanking while I'm up here, Elon Musk, has said that artificial intelligence is one of the biggest threats to humanity. Would you agree or disagree, and why?
Okay, I was on stages like this for 2 years talking about that threat before Elon Musk and Bill Gates and Stephen Hawking came out saying the same things. I said, now I have company, then I rethought it. I was convinced that yes, singularity happens, that we can process as much as the brain according to exponential curves. You don't see any change yet, you'll see it later. We'll have computers that are theoretically have as much as the brain in processing ability, but we don't know how the brain's constructed. I disagree that we're going to have artificial intelligence. Secondly, I start thinking as an engineer, feet on the ground. What are the steps that would have to take for machines to become our overlords? And they'd have to control every little physical motion, including digging earth out of the ground to get raw materials. And they'd have to control every little machine, talking to machine robots doing all this. That would take hundreds of years to change our infrastructure. We really don't have too much worry. We're just building stuff that really helps us and makes us feel good. We're going to have robot assistants. They're going to care about us. Isaac Asimov had a deep law burned into robots that they could not erase and rethink themselves. They could think about everything except this one principle. The laws of robotics were, one, a robot will not harm a human being. Now I look at conflict. If we're going to ever have a conflict, a war with robots, Wait a minute, where does conflict come from with humans? The psychologists say it comes from our mortality. Those robots, as they get smarter and smarter, if they really have consciousness and feelings and all that, they should not ever see us as a conflict, as an enemy. We should only be their friends. So Woz's law is you cannot harm a thinking robot once we have one. Cannot harm a thinking robot. We got to grow up as their best friends and partners, just like humans and dogs.
Hello, Steve. Sorry. So my question is that you're obviously a very successful and fulfilled person. So is there a balance between success and happiness? Does one cause the other, or is it kind of up in the air?
I've never felt that, but I never had to think about it in that case. I would be happy for life, and I would be successful enough for life just based on my brain that, you know, in engineering, electronics, whatever, I'd always have a job. So I never really had to have a worry about, you know, would it come to one or the other. I said, be happy at what you do. You're probably going to do a better job anyway, and do it for the right reasons, and try to be one of the best in the world. You know what? You're working. Am I going to have success? Look at any place that you all work. Do you like your job or not? Some people will come back, especially when they're young. I don't like my job, or I don't, you know. But then you start asking more questions. I don't like the people I'm with. We don't have similar personalities. We don't think the same way. We don't talk the same. So one of the things that's often missed is personalities around you that you're compatible with is a lot of what will lead to happiness in the workplace.
Oz, thank you for coming tonight. Earlier, gentleman asked a question about free and open source software, so I won't belabor that. But my question to you, I grew up, my first computer was an Apple II. I owned that computer. I could do whatever I wanted to with that machine. That's not the case with Apple products necessarily today, particularly the iPhone, the iPads, that area of products. Do you just see that as just the way things need to be today in order to create a software ecosystem? How do you feel about the fact that you don't really own those Apple devices today like we used to with our old Apples?
The Apple II was so open. Anyone, high school, college kid that had a brain could start developing little cards that plugged in that connected to music keyboards and played music and write software to put it on the screen. They could plug in all these devices one after another. They could write any software they wanted. No limitations. Nothing was closed off to them. The circuits were published in our manuals. That was the start of Apple. That was the product that was Apple's revenues for the first 10 years of Apple. One successful product. Okay, in closer times we tried to get into this sometimes closed community. But look at which Apple product changed your life the most. Me, I say, it's not the iPhone. It's the third-party app store. Once Apple had a third-party app store, people could at least contribute software, vetted to a little more security so you won't get viruses and all. But a third-party app store led to all the Ubers and everything else we didn't expect. And that made the bigger difference. So Apple went open in a case. Sometimes going open at the right times helps make a difference, and sometimes being proprietary helps ensure user satisfaction. Look at Elon Musk and the Tesla. Why would any engineer choose to build an electric car large? It doesn't make sense, especially if you're just a startup and you have little money, small batteries, small car, lower cost, just rides around the city. Elon Musk had a large family. And the first 6 supercharger stations, which are more important than the electric car in my mind, being able to drive anywhere like a gas car and never worry that you're going to be away from gas, away from electricity. The first 6 supercharger stations were between Elon Musk's home in Los Angeles and the factory up in Northern California. It's when you build a product for yourself and you have ideas of elegance and simplicity. Make it look this type of beauty that you get the greatest, best products.
This is going to have to be the last question.
Hello, Steve. I really appreciate, and I thought it was awesome how you compared when you were growing up, how the brain worked with, how you perceived computing. And the question I have is, I work in a research lab at Miami, and we study neuroscience, and we study, in particular, how the developing brain is impaired with things like alcoholism or other drug use and disorders. that are involved with that. And we've been using like different computational methods and technologies that have helped facilitate our understanding of the brain. And my question for you is, you've been exposed to many people in technology. This isn't a singularity question, but it's more about how computing is helping us leverage like our understanding of the brain. And you know, I would love to learn about like what experiences you've had and like what you've learned of how computing is just going to help our understanding of the brain like moving forward.
Yes, I agree with your comment. And computers are totally helpful in a lot of areas of everything from, treating, dealing with people who have things that kept them back in the past, maybe ADHD, or dyslexia, those sort of things, or just difficulties in learning at all. So I'm very glad to see that happen. Is it happening as fast as I would like? Of course not, because it gets attended to rarely by somebody who is close to someone else or doing research like yourself. I'm so glad that computers are used that way. When Steve Jobs and I started Apple, we had one goal for the company. We wanted to make sighted people and blind people more equal. We wanted to give them the same capabilities. And you have to admit we succeeded. Everywhere you go, people are just staring at their phones, totally blind.